So today we're here at Holiday Sports. We're gonna walk inside, get our shrimp gear, and get ready for shrimping season. You guys follow along. So here at Holiday Sports, they keep all their shrimping and crabbing gear all the way in the back. And you can usually find this area based on all the buoys up here. And to get started with your shrimping setup, one of the first things that you need is a shrimp pot. So if we come over here, you can see there's a whole bunch of options, and they all comes down to two main styles. So the first style of pot is, we call them hard pots. And what it is it's an all metal pot coated with gel. And typically they're a little bit less expensive. And a pot of this size, so you can actually see, it's fairly small. I fished this out of a 16-foot boat several times, and it's actually the same pot I still use. And they're going for maybe about 2-3 years, and they're still working really well. But a pot of this size is running you around $110. The one benefit of these hard pots is they're typically made with a really big entrance. And if you look in here, it's actually the size of two of my hands. And when you have a bigger entrance on a pot, that typically means more shrimp are able to get into your entrance, into your pot, over a shorter period of time. When you have a pot that's soaking and you're underwater for maybe an hour, hour and a half at most, you want as much accessibility to your bait as possible. And if you look in the center here, we have an easy little compartment. You can drop your bait tube in the center, and we're going to be going over bait here in just a couple seconds. But with a hard pot like this, one thing to think about is accessibility. How can you get in, get the shrimp out? This one just has a little bit of a door, but on other pots, you have a little bit of some different options. So on the rest of these hard pots, you can look and there's a whole bunch of different options. It's still a metal pot covered in that gel-coated material, and the price range does end up going up, but you start to get different styles. You can get this octagonal shaped one, and the one thing I really like about these pots is if you take a look, this will actually fit 2 bait canisters, and we actually can grab them right here. And typically for bait, we're using canisters like this, and all you have to do is set these down, and this will fit 2. And the benefit of fitting 2 bait canisters over one, number one, more volume of bait quantity, but also you can fit different baits of different viscosity in there. So you can have a fast fishing bait and a slow fishing bait, allowing you to fish much longer time periods, and also have a pot that's never not fishing. So if your bait's gone, the shrimp are getting out. If there's bait in the pot, they're working their way in. And if you look right here, same thing with that gel covered pot, large bait entrances. And with these bigger pots, you get a lot more footprint on the ocean floor. So footprint is really important to making sure that your pots are staying stuck to the ground and not moving around. The second style of pot, really popular in the Puget Sound, are these conical shaped pots. And as you can see, they're really, really nice for form factor and storing them on your boat. You're looking at around $150 price point for them starting off. And this is their bigger size. And you can see when they get lifted out, they actually nest into each other really well. One of the things to remember about shrimping out here is you can only have 4 pots per boat, maximum 2 pots per person. So no more than 4 pots per boat. So it's really nice to think about that you will only have, maybe a foot and a half of space vertically taken up on your boat storing these pots. And how they work is they're quite a bit heavy. We'll actually set one down on the ground to show you guys how it works. But it comes in and you have these hooks that we take, and you have to set the pot up. And what I like to do is I take these hooks and I actually stretch them across, and it engages these entrances for the shrimp to enter. One thing to remember is the pots won't nest into each other if you have the hooks engaged. So every single time you'll have to unhook the hooks before you can nest the pots into one another. But if you take a look, you have your entrances. One big point to make about these pots is look how small the entrance is for the shrimp. If you are fishing in an area that is predominantly has low shrimp quantity, so I know through the Saratoga Passage, there's several areas in there that shrimp quantity and shrimp density in those areas is quite a bit lower. I like to recommend a pot with a larger bait entrance area. However, in the Puget Sound, when you have high shrimp densities, you can easily get away with getting really big limits with this style of entrance. And the last thing with this pot, where does the bait canister go? And these actually belong right here in the center, just sitting like that. They have a little clip on them. You clip them on the top, and then your pot gets cinched up. And typically they fish like this underwater. So the shrimp are trying to get to the bait in the center. One of the most important things with setting up one of these pots is on the bottom, it creates almost a funneling effect where it comes down and it cinches up at the bottom. So whenever you're tying up your pots, you always want to make sure that you are cinching it down across the hole that's being made on the bottom and coming around all the way to the top and cinching it tight. And that way your pot is fishing effectively underwater. When we are shrimping out here in the Puget Sound, we are shrimping in super huge depths. I mean, I've dropped my pots as deep as 430 feet, and on average, we're in about 130, 200 feet of water. So one of the most important things is that your pot is not going anywhere. And you do that by putting weight in your pot. These pots are super light. As you can see, I can lift it with one finger. But what I always tell people is at a minimum, you should have around 15 to 20 pounds of weight in your pot, if not up to 25 pounds. And how I like to achieve that is I just use these trap weights from SMI. They work really well. They're a little bit on the pricier side, but there is a benefit to that. So it's a lead weight covered in gel. And what I do with them is I take my pot and I grab my weight, and I just like to come in and I'll zip tie them to the edges of the pot underneath the trap ramp right here, so the shrimp won't be interfering with any of that weight. And you might be asking, what's the point? Why can't I just use a brick or some kind of other rebar? Which you can, but that reduces the life of your pot, just because this gel coating material, once it gets scraped off the metal, your pot starts to rust. When you have a gel coated weight like this, it's covered in plastic, it can rub all it wants on the pot, and none of that metal is going to be rubbing off, saving the life of your pot, and you're able to get a much longer life out of your pot, especially with how much money you're investing into that. So you're looking at around maybe another $20 to $30 for some weights, and you're looking at around $110 for the pot. Another method that you can use to really anchor down your pots is actually use a small anchor. So if we go look right here, they sell these right here. These are a small anchor that they will run about a 10-foot line, and some guys will clip them onto their pots and they'll throw these off the side of the boat before setting the pot down, and that actually helps anchor the pot to the bottom. I personally don't do this because I compensate for it with a lot of weight in my pot, but that is another strategy and super popular out here in the Puget Sound. So far, we are with our pot, we're with our weights, and the next thing that you need to do is now attach some rope to your pot. Before you can attach a rope to your pot, you're going to want to get a harness. And if you look in here, we have tons of different options, but one of the best options that I find are these right here with the blue label. These are stainless steel harnesses. These run you around $35, but all it is just a 4-way harness. It's 4 arms that come down, and they have stainless steel hardware that actually clips onto your pot, and it helps attach the pot to your line and making it much cleaner setup, so you don't have to make anything at home. When you're looking at rope, you have 2 main options. Rope typically comes in about a 1/4 inch diameter, and there's also some other sizes. 1/4 inch is your most popular, and there's spools that come in 600 feet and 400 feet. My recommendation, I usually like to start with 400 feet on a spool. 400 feet gives you the access to fish, out to 300 feet of water. It gives you lots of extra line, while also giving you a lot of line to be able to deal with currents and other things that are happening up on the surface. With the rope, there's 2 different systems. There's just your basic spool of rope. There's nothing on the ends. It's leaded core line, which I highly recommend for shrimping. It keeps the line away from the surface, away from boat props, and away from losing your gear. But there is the C-Link system that's made by SMI, which is super awesome, and that's these right here. What they are is it's a small metal link that allows you to quickly disconnect your shrimp pot system and easily go from going your line in your line storage all the way to getting it in the water and back in the boat. If you're starting out simple, just get a 400-foot spool of 1/4-inch line, get a harness, tie it on, or throw a carabiner on the end, like one of these right here, just stainless steel snap. And typically, if you're very careful about it and ensuring that everything's connected, you're going to get a good, secure result. So far we have our pot, our weight, and our line, and your line's running you around that $50 price range. So think about it, when you have a couple pots in your boat and each pot has 400 feet of line, that's almost 800 feet of line on your boat. And if you're going the full maximum of 4 pots in your boat, you're going to have almost 1,600 feet of line on your boat. That's a lot of line, and that can be extremely dangerous if it's not managed very carefully. One of my favorite ways to manage line is in one of these baskets right here. Typically what we do is we'll come in and we'll coil our line into the baskets. The holes in the basket help all the water drain when you're getting it out. And just like this, you can come in and out of your boat, go into storage super easy. However, there has been an invention that has made our lives super easy, which we're going to go look at it right now. So these are called line winders, and these are absolutely awesome. They hold all your line and they just sit on your gunnel and you wind them up like this. One of the things that's absolutely awesome about these is they fit on your regular downrigger mounts. And once you're done spooling up your line on one of these reels, you click a button. Kevin! Kevin!
I think they're stealing fruit, perhaps.
Are they? They shouldn't be.
Well, we can't steal them, I guess.
Hold on. That one seems to be broken. But these spools, they come right off. And this is a smaller one, typically used for crabbing. We like the bigger ones for shrimping. But these smaller spools come right off, and you can store that spool in your boat, come in and out, super easy for storage. It's a little bit more of an expensive alternative, but at your baskets, you're only looking at about $10, $15. You get a nice basket, and it's a good entryway to store your fishing line on your boat, which is super important and safe so that that line never gets wrapped around anyone. And I always say, if you have small kiddos on the boat, keep them away from the line, keep them away from the pots while you're setting them, and then let them be involved once the pots are coming in and you're processing the shrimp, because there's no need to get as many arms and legs around line that's going off on a boat. When you have your line coming up off your pot, the next most important thing is being able to keep your pots there and also being able to identify them. One of the rules here in Washington State is all of your buoys on your pots and your main buoys, they have to be yellow. So for crabbing, it's red and white, yellow for shrimping. And what I do is when the line is coming off my pot, so I have my pot sitting in the water like right here, I have my 400 feet of light coming up, the first buoy that comes into that pot is one of these foam buoys. So on here, you'll see me write my phone number, my address, my name, and so that if my pot ever gets lost or WDFW needs to contact you, all of your name and address is on there. That, by law, needs to be on your buoys. You have your foam buoy going first, and then back behind my foam buoy, about 15 feet away, 10 to 15 feet away, I run one of these polyform buoys. And I am a huge fan of these pill-shaped buoys. These are awesome because when they're inflated, they look like a big giant pill, and they do not drag in the water. If you think about it, when you're fishing in strong currents, you have line that's going all the way up to the surface. And if you have a big giant buoy as the first thing that the water is seeing, that's going to work like a parachute in yanking your pot and trying to yank it off the bottom. But if you're running a small buoy like this that can even go down underwater, and then you have a big buoy up on the surface, that's going to ensure that your pot's not going to get lost. So let's break it down quickly. So you have your pot, you have your 400 feet of line coming off. The first buoy in line is one of these foam buoys. And typically what I like to do is I'll run a line and have these separate so I can store them on my boat. Foam buoy first, and then about 15 feet of line right in between these two buoys, and that's my buoy setup. A lot of guys will double up on these or use a float buoy that has a stick on it, but I'm just a fan of these basic foam buoys and then one of these pill-shaped polyforms. With these right here, they make two sizes. This is the larger of the two, and I'm a big fan of these. So make sure for your foam buoys, you're getting all your phone number on there as well. These are around $25, and these are around $75. Do not cheap out on your buoys, because if you do not get high quality buoys, they tend to break down in the sun. So make sure you get a good polyform buoy so you're not going to be losing any of your expensive shrimp gear. So now that you have your shrimp pot completely set up with your line, your buoys, and your weight, you are now ready to worry about your bait. And I like to buy these right here. These are probably one of your most popular shrimp bait canisters that we sell. So what it is it's just a basic plastic shrimp bait canister. The top unscrews. You can see it's just a plastic bottom right there. And these are absolutely great if you're trying to make big batches of bait. And what you'll see us do is when we fill up these bait canisters, we're just putting them in the freezer, we're letting them freeze, and then we're able to put them in and use them in our bait and in our pots to be able to bait our pots. And as we showed before, they're meant to fit into these pots. So now that you have all the right gear, one of the most important things about getting and catching shrimp is your bait. I think that your successfulness in how much shrimp you catch and how successful you are, half of that comes down to how much did you prepare in making your bait. And I will share with you my personal formula that I use for shrimp bait out here in the Puget Sound. So here's what you're going to do. Super simple. You walk into Holiday Sports. You grab a jug or a big little bucket of pellets just like this. You go home, you grab your wife's blender, and then you put all these pellets in said blender. You don't tell your wife because she's probably going to kill you. But then you blend up these pellets into a fine powder. The reason I'm telling you to do that, and if you've never seen these pellets before, this is typically for a commercial application, but what it is it's a prawn pellet, and they're really hard. You can see I'm squishing on it really hard, but they're meant to dissolve over a much more closer to a 24-hour period. But you're only shrimping for maybe an hour, hour and a half at most. So it's really important to break down that pellet initially. If you don't want to use the blender, take the end of a hammer into a garbage bag and just pound them up. It makes a huge difference, trust me. So you're going to grab a bucket. So in this bucket, we're going to do a list right here of everything that's going to go in. So I do one of these, one little bucket of prawn bait, all broken up and ground up. Then I do an entire jar or jug or quart, whatever you want to call it, of this fish oil. And it's just a great product. It's just processed fish oil. It works really well. Fill it into the bucket. So you got fish oil, you got prawn bait. Step number 3, you come over and you get 3 cans of jack mackerel. I like 3 cans. This jack mackerel has lots of fluids in it, so you're just dumping those into your bucket, and then you are adding some Friskies. Usually I will do about 6 cans of these. When you get all that combined, mixing by hand is fun, but not necessary. A paint mixer will do, and it'll make the job way, way faster. Typically for a day of shrimping, you'll see me make about half a 5-gallon bucket, and I usually always have leftover, which, by the way, this stuff works really well for a chum, for halibut. Sorry, I spaced out there. Chum for halibut. It works extremely well. But you can get all the ingredients here super readily available, and you just fill up your bucket and fill them in and get them going. So when you're pulling shrimp pots, you do not want to be pulling them by hand. We'll insert a video here of me pulling one by hand. Not fun. Don't do it unless you absolutely want to be swole, but you don't. So one of these pot pullers right here is a really good way to go. Scotty makes a really good product. The Pacific Pro is a really good product. And the one thing I will say about the two of them, they're both really good products, but they have their strong suits. The Pacific Pro is an awesome, really fast unit, and you can have an attachment called the Bulldog attachment that'll actually make the unit completely hands-free. It'll coil your line. You just stand back and watch it do your job. And when it pulls up the pot, it's pulling the pot above your gunnel, so it's much easier on saving on your back, especially when you have a pot full of shrimp. While the Scotty unit, also a really good unit, but you're actually having to use it the whole time, pulling it up. It's a small unit. That's what I love, and I have ran this on my boat before. When you're done with it, you tuck it away into your cuddy cabin, and you never have to think about it again until shrimping season comes again. The smaller Scotty, they have a lot of torque, and they work just fine for shrimp. Now, If you have a couple bucks to spend and you have an awesome boat and you really want to kit it out and be absolutely killing it for shrimp, you gotta get yourself one of these. These are the Pacific Power haulers by Discovery Bay, and they are absolutely killer unit. It's a giant arm that comes out, has a giant unit, and they have several different models. Come in here if you want to talk to someone, right? They have Kevin John in here. He'll help you out. He'll get you tricked out on one of these units. But once you get set up with one of these, you'll be pulling up pots as fast as you can. Now you might be asking, why don't you want to pull a pot by hand? Well, here's the thing. Shrimp are very elusive creatures that once they're in a pot, if they feel danger, they're going to be getting out. So as soon as you start yanking that pot off the ocean floor, they're going to be working on getting out of that pot as fast as possible. So if you can have a pot puller that's putting even pressure and causing that water to push those shrimp down to the bottom of the pot, you're going to lose a lot less shrimp. While if you're pulling by hand, every single yank, you're losing 1 or 2 shrimp. And by the time you get up to the top, you had 400 shrimp in your pot and you're only ending up with a couple hundred, which still sounds like a lot. But when you have a family on your boat and you're trying to limit out, that can be the difference between catching limits and going home with a couple of empty bags. And the last thing when it comes down to shrimping is that there's 2 big main shrimp species in the Puget Sound. There's spot prawns and there's coonstripe shrimp. So coonstripe shrimp, separate seasons, a little bit not as popular of a fishery, but you'll see a big difference in the pot style. You'll see a 1/2-inch mesh. So it's actually a lot smaller because on average the shrimp are smaller, but similar styles of pots. These are not allowed to be used for the spot prawn fishery. And there's several restrictions on seasons, areas, and the pot variety for when you're targeting coonstripe shrimp. While if you look over here on a spot prawn shrimp, you have 1-inch holes. That way all those smaller shrimp can easily escape. The last style of pot that they sell here at Holiday Sports that I really like are these Northwest traps. These are absolutely awesome. They're made here locally in Bellingham, I believe. I might be off. But the awesome thing about these is they almost feel like a commercial quality. They have a full stainless steel build and they're absolutely heavy. You can see in the inside, they're built with weight already incorporated into the bottom. And it's that nesting style as well, where all the smaller entrances get cinched up towards the center. And looking at this weight, we'll actually transition to the next and one of the most important steps with setting up your shrimp gear. Now, when it comes down to shrimping, there's a couple rules that you need to follow. Number 1, always check your local regulations on where and when shrimp is open. The seasons are all over the place. You got to check your area. So double check. If you're really unsure, feel free to call Holiday Sports, and any of the folks in here are more than willing to answer your questions on whether or not where and when shrimp is going to be open. Number 2, when you're catching shrimp, typically you're only allowed 80 shrimp per person. And it's written in their rules by WDFW that every limit of 80 shrimp needs to be stored in a separate container. What I like to do is bring gallon-sized Ziploc bags, and after processing and popping the heads on my boat, I will put my 80 shrimp in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. That way I know that's my limit and it's not confused with anyone else's limit. The shrimp come on the boat, and one of the most important things to do when shrimp are coming on the boat is I'll take a bucket, fill it with water, and put the shrimp in the water to let them purge. And this process is really popular in the South with crayfish, but it works really well with shrimp. If they're eating all this cat food and all this stuff, well, you don't want to be eating shrimp with cat food in them. That's not really good for us, better for cats. So with that being said, when you put them in the water, their digestive system only lasts about 30 seconds. So they're going to be pooping out all this bait, and you'll see that water turn murky. Once you know that your shrimp are nice and clean and their digestive systems are clean after 5 to 10 minutes, then you can go ahead and dispatch them and process your shrimp. That way you're going home with a super clean product. So now that we know what you need to get for shrimp, this is what you're going to do. Grab a shopping cart, come to the back. You need your bait containers. Come in here, grab 2 of these. Boom. Bait containers, you're good. Grab your spool of line. You're good. You got your line. You're going to come over here, pick out the pots you want. Which one should I get? I'm going to get the octagon one. Boom. Octagon pot going in one of your shopping carts. Then we're going to come in here, I'm gonna get one of these buoys, right? This one's got a nice cool stick on it. We can easily do that. Shove it in, boom, we got our buoy. Let's see what else we need to get. We gotta get one of these big buoys right here. Nice big polyform pill shape, just like I recommended. That's what you want. Just like that, shove that on top. Oh yeah, we need a basket to hold our line. Follow me. Grab the cart. Okay, we'll grab one of these baskets, and while we're at it, we just got to pick up one of these Scotty pop pullers, and we should be good to go. So go ahead, grab all this stuff. The key, what they like at the register, is when you just pile it up as high as you can, and you're good to go.